fortunate. Today we'll be able to hear from Josh Geffre and Heidi Connor, who are fisheries biologists at Olympic National Park. During their presentation, we're going to ask people to, if they have a question that comes up, to use the chat feature. On Zoom, the chat feature is the little talk bubble. So if you click on that, it'll open up a window. You'll be able to type in your question, and then we will get to those questions at the end. If chatting is not your thing, hold your question till the end. Then we can use sort of the raise hand feature, and we'll try and get to people's question at the end. We'll probably have around 10 minutes or so for questions at the end of the program. I'd also like to just thank the North Olympic Library System for their partnership in helping to bring this these series of programs to you, and also acknowledge the assistance that we received from the Friends of Olympic National Park, who are also co-sponsoring this presentation. So I know there's a lot of people here and you want to hear about Elwha fishtails, so I'm going to turn it over to Heidi and Josh. So thanks.
All right, thank you, Dean and Sarah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Heidi, and you'll hear from Josh in a little bit. So Josh and I have been fisheries biologists for Olympic National Park for just over a decade. Prior to that, and obtaining biology degrees, I've also done fisheries work in Idaho and Alaska, and Josh has done fisheries work in Montana. And today we would like to provide you with a brief update on fish recolonization in the Upper Elwha since dam removal. We hope to cover the major projects that we, the Park Service, have been involved with, but we are just two of the many researchers who have studied or are studying the Elwha. There are many other interdisciplinary projects out there, and ours is just a slice of that pie. So I'm gonna stop my video here and get started. Okay. All right, so we would like to cover the following in our presentation today: our overall objectives and some brief background, the variety of methods we employed and some of the results from those. And then, given that a dam removal project of this magnitude had not been attempted previously, we tried many of the tools in our toolkit, including radio telemetry, electrofishing, riverscape, snorkel, and spawner surveys. We also wanted to cover some questions we'd like to pursue and overall conclusions. And then finally, we would like to acknowledge everyone who has made these projects possible over the years. Here. All right, so as fish recolonized the upper watershed, our overall objectives were to determine species extent, distribution, and relative abundance, but also to assess passage at the former dam sites in major canyons. This figure is showing 7 of the main players that we've been monitoring in terms of anadromous species and how they will potentially distribute in the watershed based on pre-dam accounts. And this does not include sea run cutthroat or Pacific lamprey. For our purposes, I'm focusing on our monitoring activities in the upper watershed, which we've defined in this box as the area upriver of Glines, Glines Canyon. This area spans approximately 50 kilometers of main stem river and an additional tributary habitat. So there are historical and anecdotal accounts of the species pictured here migrating above Glines Canyon prior to the dams being in place. This visual timeline put together by Sam Brankman and Jeff Duda highlights when certain fish species passed the former dam sites on the Elwha. The Elwha Dam was removed by April 2012, and the associated events are in orange. while Glines Canyon was removed by August 2014, and those events are displayed in purple. Once the river was fully reopened for business, the first two known species to migrate upstream through Glines Canyon were bull trout and Chinook salmon. And then shortly after, in the fall of 2014, some bedrock fell into Glines Canyon, creating at least a partial barrier to many species. Despite that rockfall in 2015, we did start to see winter steelhead in the former Lake Mills area. And then later in 2015, much of that rockfall was blasted into smaller chunks, and that helped improve passage for other species. Once Glines Canyon Dam was removed, we expanded our monitoring effort into the upper river, including spawner and carcass surveys with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe. I mentioned Chinook passing Glines just after dam removal. So Mel Ellefson, a tribal biologist from the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe, observed a female Chinook adult in the former Lake Mills area in early September. So shortly after, we also snorkeled that same reach and verified 3 Chinook adults. This photo on the left is from that snorkel survey. Those were really exciting moments for us, and we definitely had some victory dancing. But stay tuned for the bull trout story in a few slides. I'll touch on that later. So another trigger for us to expand our range occurred when we conducted a resource assessment of the Haze fire in 2016. While we snorkeled from the Haze River confluence to Elkhorn, which is about 5 river miles, we documented the highest observation of summer steelhead and Chinook adults near the Haze River confluence since dam removal. And that middle photo is from that survey. Wow. Okay. One of the first monitoring projects we implemented was a radio telemetry project in 2014 through 2017. This allowed us to track fish movements throughout the watershed, especially when other survey methods were difficult or impossible due to river conditions. This study was designed to assess fish passage at possible seasonal barriers, including major canyon reaches. Weekly, we would use a drift net to capture fish. Then we would externally tag adult salmon and internally tag steelhead and bull trout. We also strategically located fixed telemetry stations, employed weekly manual ground tracking, and monthly aerial surveys. The radio tags on each fish emitted coded bursts. Each tagged fish had a unique identification code in a specific frequency. In this middle top photo, we're using a drift net to capture fish for tagging. The one on the right here depicts Josh doing a mobile tracking survey near Eureka Canyon. And then in this photo here, we had just surgically installed a radio tag in this bull trout, and Catherine is releasing her back into the river after recovery period. I don't know why I have yellow lines all over the screen, but I just, maybe you guys can't see those. Let's see. So of the 406 radio tagged fish, 241 were tagged in the lower river, which is the river reach below the Elwha Dam site, 109 in the middle river, the reach between the dams, and 11 were tagged in the upper river. 45 coho were also tagged at the Lower Elwha Clallam tribal hatchery, transported and released in the middle river. So 33 bull trout, 1 summer steelhead, and 1 coho were the only radio tagged fish to pass above the former Glines Canyon dam site. Bull trout were the MVPs of this project. And I alluded to this in a previous slide, but 4 radio tagged bull trout ascended Glines Canyon days before the dam removal was complete. All we had to do was crack open the door. Not only that, but the majority of tagged fish that ascended Glines Canyon were bull trout. Of the radio tagged fish, bull trout recolonized highest in the watershed, so around the headwaters or Chicago camp, which is river kilometer 64. There was also evidence of anadromy or saltwater entry and consecutive year upper river migrations. So they are the rock stars. Telemetry was less effective for assessing movements of salmon and steelhead, but one radio tag summer steelhead ascended glines and was detected near the Goldy River, which is about river kilometer 47. And one radio tag coho ascended glines and was detected near Boulder Creek, river kilometer 24. So spawner and snorkel surveys proved to be more effective for other species. Projects like the radio telemetry one allowed us to collect lengths and weights of many of the fish that were captured for tagging, including bull trout. Prior to the dam removal, the bull trout we measured fell more within this length and this weight range. And the technical term we used to describe them in this photo was snake-like. So pre-dam removal, about 150 millimeters to 600 millimeters. And then the weight was up to about 1.3 kilograms. So then post-dam removal, we're seeing evidence of increasing length and weight amongst the bull trout we captured. So there's a shift in both length and weight, and you can see that this fish is a little girthier than the one pre-dam removal. Essentially, with the dam removals, bull trout migration has reawakened. The riverine habitat is reconnected, providing access to more food sources and cold water refugia that bull trout thrive in. This in turn has most likely contributed to their larger sizes and a greater migratory ability. The next set of surveys included Riverscape surveys. So a riverscape is a spatially continuous rapid survey of a river from the headwaters to the mouth, where designated teams are collecting habitat data and the associated fish counts. We conduct these habitat/snorkel surveys at lower summer flows in about a week, and we gain a more accurate representation of what is happening in the river at that time of year. We have conducted riverscapes around the peninsula, with 4 of those occurring on the Elwha, 2007 and 8, and 2018 and 2019. And when I say we, I mean our park fisheries crew, our park packers and mules, and up to 20 biologists from other agencies, entities, and tribes. So with the data collected, we can compare distribution and abundance of fish species, including size classes, biological hotspots, hatchery versus wild components, juvenile locations throughout the watershed, and we can also produce maps of temperature and habitat. This table shows the total fish counts from each riverscape, from the headwaters to the mouth, which occurred in most surveys. The 2007 and 2008 surveys provide a pre-dam removal baseline to compare with 2018 and 2019. We can use these surveys to better measure fish and habitat response to dam removal on a larger scale. And of course, some of these surveys don't always go to plan. You can see in 2008, so in this row here, that the numbers have dipped a little bit. And we had a lovely rain event that August, which made it difficult to see much beyond what was right in front of us as we snorkeled our way downriver. We also experienced visibility issues in 2018 and 2019 in the lower river, which did affect fish counts for those reaches. We've noticed a general increase in certain species over the Elwha riverscapes post-dam removal. This figure is showing the numbers of Chinook adults for each riverscape, with 2019 showing just under 2,000 individuals. And the trend is similar for bull trout. Those numbers are depicted by the orange columns. The blue columns represent the number of summer steelhead, which were absent from the Riverscape counts until 2018. Note that we counted 341 summer steelhead in 2019. And I wanted to go on a quick tangent here to address summer steelhead. So increasing numbers of summer steelhead were an unexpected outcome of this restoration project. They were considered extirpated while the dams were in place, and very few individuals had been documented previously. Every year, though, we continue to see summer steelhead, mostly in the upper Elwha. It's really exciting. So I don't know if you can see, but this is the first one we saw in 2016 in the upper right corner there. We're seeing notable increases in the numbers of trout, just under 25,000 in the 2019 survey. When I say trout in this presentation, I'm usually referring to rainbow and cutthroat trout. In our downstream snorkel surveys, it is difficult to distinguish juvenile rainbow from cutthroat, so we lump them together. The majority, though, are rainbow / steelhead or Oncorhynchus micus. This slide is depicting the longitudinal distribution of those fish species from the headwaters to the mouth. These figures were derived from the 2018 survey, but the goal is to compare each of the surveys. River kilometers are on the x-axis, and you're moving, as you move left to right, you're moving upriver. We can see that most bull trout and summer steelhead were observed in the upper reaches of the Elwha, so up here, while Chinook were generally found around river kilometer 30 or below. Trout were ubiquitous throughout the watershed. The red lines indicate canyon areas that were not surveyed in 2018. Our hope is to produce similar figures for each riverscape we conduct. The Riverscape surveys also provide insight on spatial extent of juveniles. These maps are showing juvenile detections for Chinook, rainbow, and cutthroat trout, and coho. Their presence is all indicated by the yellow lines in each figure. We saw Chinook juveniles as high as Geyser Valley that year. So that's in 2018. And then coho juveniles as high as the Mills area. And then of course, trout were all over the place. The plan is to create a similar map for the 2019 Riverscape. And that leads me to the next method we tried, our electrofishing effort in 2018 and 2019. The purpose of that study was to characterize assemblage of juvenile fish in the river margins in the summer, document growth, relative density, and biomass of young of year salmonids, and then also to determine if there were any differences in the assemblage and population metrics between the upper reaches on either end of the Grand Canyon, which is the longest and least known river canyon in the Elwha. We decided on 4 main stem locations, 2 above the Grand Canyon, so Elkhorn and Haze, and 2 below in Geyser Valley and Mills. We electrofish the same 1 kilometer reaches at each location every month from June through September. So these graphs are showing species composition from those surveys. Each reach from June through September is on the x-axis. In 2018, we did capture a few coho juveniles circled in red in Mills. So up here, this is 2018. And Chinook juveniles were present in Mills and Geyser. So they're in yellow, and they're showing those here. Oncorhynchus micus were predominant in all reaches, with bull trout having a strong presence in the uppermost reaches. In 2019, we started to see coho in Geyser Valley, again, the red circle, and Chinook parr, circled in yellow, were observed in both the Elkhorn and Haze reaches for most of the sampling season. We were seeing evidence of successful spawning in those upper reaches. With the larger sample sizes of Omicus and bull trout, we analyzed in a bit more detail the length frequencies. This slide is showing the length frequencies of Micus throughout each summer, with 2018 on the top and 2019 on the bottom. Fork lengths are on the x-axis. Make a note of the scale of the y-axis when comparing the relative abundance of bull trout, which I'll show in the next slide. The lengths collected from Mills and Geyser have been combined and are shown in yellow, while Elkhorn and Haze are shown in red. Remember, Mills and Geyser are the two lower reaches, Haze and Elkhorn are the two upper reaches. We were able to document emergence timing, or the stage at which fry swim up from the gravel, especially in the 2019 surveys. In Mills and Geyser, we captured young of year salmonids in June, and the frequency of that cohort or age class increased in July and August. Emergence was more evident in July in Elkhorn and Haze. The cooler river temperatures in those upper reaches can help explain why emergence timing and growth rates were slightly lower or slower than the lower reaches. We can further compare the mean fork lengths between these two seasons, but also to previous electrofishing studies done prior to dam removal in 2004 and 2005 by park fisheries crews. The length frequency histograms are laid out in a similar format for bull trout. The relative abundance was lower for bull trout as compared with the number of Omicus captured. Two distinct cohorts or age classes were present throughout the summer of both years. While we did capture young of year bull trout, emergence had occurred earlier in the spring. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Josh now, and he's gonna talk more about our tributary and main stem snorkel surveys.
All right, thanks, Heidi. So like she said, moving on to the upper tributary surveys, we felt we had gathered the information that we needed in the upper main stem from the electrofishing surveys that were conducted in 2018 and 2019. Our next study in 2020 was to assess potential habitat and select upper river tributaries. Little was known about fish use in those tributaries, specifically anadromous fish use. Based on the results of habitat surveys conducted by Hosey and Associates in the late 1980s, we decided to inventory the lower portion of Cat, Long, Goldy, Haze, and the Godkin. These are large tributaries that offer juvenile rearing habitat. We chose these tributaries based on the length of available habitat in their geographic location within the basin. Each tributary is located above a potential fish barrier in the main stem Elwha. So here you can see Cat Creek, which is above Glines Canyon. Here you can see Long Creek, which is above Rika. Goldy is above the mighty Grand Canyon. Haze River is above No Name or Goin Canyon. And then Godkin is above Carlson Canyon. As a crew of two, we surveyed each site in July and August. The July trip was more of a recon survey. We accessed the highest point in each tributary that would still be conducive for snorkel and habitat surveys. We started at the highest point and surveyed downstream. In August, we subsampled habitat units within each tributary that were more favorable for spawning and rearing, such as the pools, glides, and other areas. We also collected eDNA samples. Cat Creek was the lowest tributary that we surveyed in the Elwha watershed. It was also our longest survey at 1,300 meters, or about 0.8 of a mile. It is located above Glines Canyon, which is about 26 river kilometers from the Elwha mouth. For habitat, we documented high gradient step pools throughout, riffles, and a few pools. The substrate was predominantly boulder, followed by cobble and pockets here and there of gravel. Both the habitat types and substrate composition were generally similar across all the tributaries we surveyed that summer. The fish counts you see here are, and for the rest of the tributaries, are from the August subsampling event. The water visibility during our July survey was fair at most for most of the tributaries. We encountered a few hundred small trout. Right here you can see 230, and then we encountered a few bull trout, and we did see Chinook parr and coho parr in Cat Creek. Next is Long Creek. Long Creek drains into Geyser Valley and is located above Rika Canyon. Long Creek is about 30 river kilometers from the Elwha mouth. It was our shortest survey of the 5 tributaries, coming in at 320 meters, or about 0.2 of a mile. The top end of the survey featured a beautiful waterfall, and you can see this arrow pointing at me snorkeling in this pool, and we just included that for scale of the size of the falls. We had similar findings to Cat Creek in terms of habitat, substrate, and fish counts, although we did not find coho parr in Long Creek. We did see Chinook parr. Right, next is the Goldy River, which is located above the Grand Canyon. It's about 46.5 river kilometers from the Elwha mouth. It held the most mystery of the 5 tributaries. It was a very steep and remote watershed. We made it just over 500 meters, or about 0.3 of a mile above the confluence before we couldn't physically get past this 2-meter drop in a whitewater canyon section. We definitely made an attempt, but we were unsuccessful. In our survey, we encountered similar habitat types, substrate, and fish counts to other surveys, except no salmon were observed in the Goldy. According to Hosey and Associates, there are a few miles of fish accessible habitat in Goldy. We are trying to figure out other ways to access higher points in the Goldy River, and we'd be curious if anyone has been able to access from a higher location. The Haze River is located above Goen Canyon, or No Name Canyon. It's about 52 river kilometers from the Elwha mouth. We started our survey just below the bridge on the Haze, which is about 626 meters, or 0.4 of a mile from the mouth. The habitat was similar to the other tributaries and included some long, high gradient riffle sections. There was more large woody debris in this reach, most likely due to a slide zone in the middle of the reach. We observed 1 steelhead red, which is the highest one observed in the basin to date. We did not see any salmon in Haze. Godkin Creek is located above Carlson Canyon, roughly 58 river kilometers from the Elwha mouth. This tributary was the highest we surveyed. We started our survey at the base of a canyon, which is about 1,200 meters, or 3/4 of a mile from the mouth. We documented habitat, substrate, and fish count similar to the other tributaries. We also did not see any salmon in Godkin Creek. So after not finding evidence of adult or juvenile salmon in the 3 tributaries above the Grand Canyon in July and August, we decided to return to the upper river to check the main stem for adults. We had previously observed Chinook, steelhead, sockeye, and anadromous bull trout in main stem areas upriver of Glines Canyon. In September of 2020, there was a short window between heavy smoke and a rain event. So we hiked up and snorkeled from the confluence of Godkin Creek to Elkhorn. This graph is a summary of our observations with reach breaks on the x-axis. So here you can see Godkin to Haze and Haze to Elkhorn. Blue is steelhead, bull trout is in orange, and then these green diamonds are the trout counts in those indexes, and they have their own axis over here on this side, just because the counts were so much higher than the bull trout and steelhead. We had amazing water clarity, and perhaps our trout counts reflect that. We counted over 13,000 in about 10 miles of river, which again are indicated by the green diamonds. We also observed almost equal numbers of bull trout in each section and a few more summer steelhead in the Haze to Elkhorn reach, which is this right here. Adult and juvenile salmon were not observed in any of the reaches upstream of Mills Valley in 2020. All right, here's a photo of the entrance of Carlson Canyon, which is the uppermost major canyon in the Elwha River. It is located between Godkin Creek and the Haze River. The canyon is roughly 1 mile in length. The downstream end is about 1 mile above the Haze River confluence. In the past, our crews have avoided surveying Carlson Canyon as little was known about obstructions or passage through the area. But during our September of 2020 main stem survey with some safety gear and scouting, we decided to venture in. We didn't need the safety gear, thankfully, but we wanted to share these next few photos and a video, mostly because river canyons are really special places. So this first photo is the first major drop, and it's hard to tell from this picture, but it's about a 2-meter drop from water surface here to water surface here. And this is about a 30-second video I'm going to play for you. This is actually a picture of Heidi. This is the second major drop, about halfway through the canyon or so. And again, this is a 2-meter drop from water surface to water surface. Hopefully this works. So our findings in Carlson Canyon include 4 summer steelhead. We counted just over 1,000 trout and 21 bull trout in that 1 mile stretch of the canyon. All right, so now I'm going to transition to 2021. In August and September, we focused our snorkel survey efforts on 5 specific main stem reaches, which are highlighted in green on the map. Includes the Mills Valley, this area, Geyser Valley, reaches around Elkhorn, Haze, and Godkin Creek. Trout Unlimited and the Lower Elwha Clallam Tribe staff surveyed 2 additional reaches around Mary's Falls and Goin Canyon, which are highlighted here and here. Here are the main stem fish counts from these two surveys. August is the survey on top, and September is on the bottom. And we're moving upriver from left to right. So Mills Valley here, all the way up through these canyons, Godkin and Carlson Canyon here at the far right. The highest diversity of fish is in the Mills Valley. As you can see, we observed steelhead, bull trout, Chinook, pink, sockeye, And we also saw coho fry present in this August survey. Again, here are the trout counts on a different scale over here on the secondary y-axis. In September, we observed an influx of Chinook and pink salmon in the Mills area, but did not see any salmon above the Mills reach. We continued to see summer steelhead and anadromous bull trout and high densities of trout as we moved upriver. There was a shift in bull trout and trout numbers in September towards the upper reaches. Bull trout were most likely moving into their spawning areas for the fall. For comparison purposes, counts from the 2 additional reaches surveyed by Trout Unlimited and the Elwha tribe are not included, but they counted 43 summer steelhead and 13 bull trout, and of course, numerous trout, mostly around the Goldy River confluence. All right, now transitioning to spawner surveys. We conducted weekly spawner surveys for many different species throughout the year. This table highlights the run and survey timing for each species. Spawner survey conditions are ideal during low summer flows for Chinook, sockeye, and pink salmon. Survey conditions for other species involve a lot of schedule flexibility around rain events and dry suits during the rainy months. The reds are geo-referenced, live and dead fish are counted, and counts are compared with other reaches in the system. For most species, red surveys are generally conducted from Geyser Valley to the park boundary. For Chinook spawning surveys, we've extended our survey range to at least Godkin Creek since 2016, and in some years as high as Chicago Camp. So here we have, on the x-axis, we have the locations within the valley, so Mills Valley, Geyser Valley, Godkin Creek. Y-axis, we have the number of reds we observed, and then each bar represents a year starting in 2016 all the way through last year. So as you can see, the highest abundance of Chinook reds across all years in all areas is in the Mills Valley. We also sample Chinook carcasses to collect biometrics, which include scales, lengths, otoliths, etc. And we compare the hatchery versus natural origin component in different reaches of the river. While the hatchery origin percentage remains high, roughly 95%, we typically see more natural origin spawners in the upper river. We've documented increasing numbers of reds in the Mills area for winter steelhead, pink, and coho, but we didn't see any salmon or salmon reds upriver of Mills in 2021. So based on all of these methods that we have described, this map is an overall summary of what we know about the spatial extent of anadromous salmonids in the Elwha post-dam removal. The location of each star is based on visual observations for each species. We've documented all these species above Glines Canyon except for chum salmon. Their upper extent is in Glines Canyon. Pink salmon are observed in former Lake Mills area. Chum and pink salmon are not known for their jumping abilities, so that could be a factor why we aren't seeing them higher in the watershed. Also, chum numbers were extremely low prior to dam removal. The upper extent for coho and sockeye is in Geyser Valley. Sockeye have been a bit of a surprise. Many have been found to be strays from other watersheds based on genetic samples. They could be a pioneering species. A Chinook red was observed near Godkin Creek. Let me go back a second. A Chinook River was observed near Godkin Creek. We documented bull trout in the headwaters and summer steelhead not too far behind. So these are our list of, our partial list of current questions. Are chum salmon passing Glines Canyon? Well, they are fall spawners, which leads to more unfavorable survey conditions with high flows. They are poor jumpers and historically have been in low numbers in the Elwha. And although we haven't seen them above Glines yet, we conduct spawner surveys in the fall for coho and may opportunistically find them. We are also snorkeling during summer low flows and into the early fall and may encounter them. Why have we not observed salmon above the former Mills area the past few years? Well, there may be a number of reasons, but perhaps there is a physical barrier or a velocity barrier in certain upriver canyons, such as Rika Canyon or higher. Perhaps they are not feeling the pressure to move above Mills to spawn. Where are most summer and winter steelhead spawning in the upper watershed? Again, it's hard to say exactly due to unfavorable or unsafe surveying conditions during January through June. And it can be difficult to access the upper watershed due to poor weather. How much are steelhead contributing to the increasing trout densities in the upper watershed? We presume they are adding to the gene pool. Our future directions, we plan to continue with snorkel and spawner surveys as long as we can. We are in the last year of funding for our Elwha monitoring program. It may be useful to conduct another Riverscape survey on the Elwha within the next decade. My final question on this slide, are we ready to reopen the Elwha to fishing? Since dam removal started, a commercial and recreational fishing moratorium has been in place. This has helped reduce impacts to Elwha fisheries while they recover. The moratorium is a significant concession from the lower Elwha Clallam tribe, as they have not commercially fished for several years. The moratorium expires this summer, and co-managers are continuing discussions on how best to move forward, so stay tuned. In conclusion, while no one survey method was the best, a combination of techniques helped us determine species extent, distribution, and relative abundance. Chinook have been an easier species to monitor due to their summer run timing. The rainy season is less conducive to surveys for species like coho and steelhead. We also have glacial till to contend with during peak steelhead spawning, which significantly reduces the visibility. Mills Valley appears to be a hotspot for many returning salmon and steelhead, and we're seeing a positive trend for most species. Summer steelhead are returning to the upper Elwha in encouraging numbers. This has been an inspiring success story, given that most runs in the Pacific Northwest are in decline. Bull trout are early and rapid recolonizers, and were the champions of the radio telemetry project. Historical accounts of the Elwha being a trout haven still ring true. Trout numbers are orders of magnitude higher than other species. Those densities have increased due to a number of factors, including, we believe, the distribution of steelhead. And the last point that I wanted to make was that dams were in place for roughly 100 years, and we are now just 10 years since the Elwha Dam was removed. It is encouraging that we are seeing positive trends for fish abundance, distribution, and migration. Overall, more time is needed to fully measure and appreciate how all the various fish species have responded to the dam removals. We have learned a lot, but we still have a lot to learn. Before I close out this presentation, I just want to take a minute to thank the Olympic National Park trail crew and packers. They were integral in making our surveys happen, particularly in the backcountry. They supported 2 to 20 biologists on several different occasions. They loaded up to 1,000 pounds of gear onto mules, including dry bags, a very awkward backpack electrofishing unit, underwater camera housings, etc. The packers also supported Riverscape teams as they surveyed up to 65 river miles in 5 days. Pictured here are two packers, Hans at the top and Daniel Boone Jones, the lead packer, who retired this fall, and just a few of the mighty mules that made our lives much easier. We're very appreciative of all their efforts, and we couldn't have done it without them. One of the main takeaways from this project is that collaboration is key. We would not have been able to reach our objectives or accomplish our surveys without help from our partners and volunteers. With a common goal, we have shared observations and resources and can pass on lessons to others attempting similar projects. It has been an amazing group for all of us to work with. So thank you all. I'd also like to thank the North Olympic Library for giving us this opportunity to share our research and observations on the beautiful Elwha River. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Dean was going to share the questions with you, but I've just been told that he lost connection. So let me quickly review a couple of the questions that I've seen come up. One question from somebody who's new: where is the hatchery?
I can answer that one. So there are two hatcheries on the Elwha. There's the state hatchery, which is just, it's probably about river mile 3. There's a pedestrian bridge just upstream of it, the double-decker bridge. And then the other hatchery, the lower Elwha Clallam Tribal Hatchery, is closer to the mouth of the river on the Elwha Clallam Reservation. So maybe a mile or half a mile above the mouth.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Are there spawner escapement goals for each species, and how close are we to achieving them?
I can shoot for that one too. Oh, so or give it a shot. We do have escapement goals for the ESA listed species, so Chinook, steelhead, and bull trout. In terms of meeting the escapement numbers for those, well, what we have right now are guidelines. We don't have specific numbers that are set in stone, but we're getting close to those in general. For the other species, I would say that we're seeing a positive trend in the number of fish returning from the salt, but we're still, I wouldn't say, we're cautious about saying pink salmon and chum salmon are doing well. I think we still need a lot more time. The numbers of chum salmon especially were extremely low before dam removal started. And so I think it's going to take a while before we see any real trend either way for those particular species.
Thanks, Heidi. It looks like Ranger Dean is back, so I will let him take care of the rest of the questions.
Sarah, I would love to be able to do that, but when my internet went down, so did all of the chat questions.
Okay.
So I cannot see them. Sorry.
I can do it. So
yay, Sarah.
Thank you. For everybody who did ask the question, there was a reasonable number. So I will say that we will, any questions we don't get to, we will compile, and Heidi and Josh and Dean can help get answers together, and we will post them afterwards since we just have a couple minutes left. One that just came in is, how do your data compare to the predictions made when the dam project was promoted? Is that one that doesn't have a good answer?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute unsuccessfully. We don't have a specific answer for that. But I think overall, our expectations are pretty much in line with what we're seeing now. I think the surprises have been summer steelhead because they were considered extirpated. We didn't know the rate at which resident trout might resume anadromy and become steelhead. So that was also another really cool surprise. And then, I don't know, like sockeye generally, since we're seeing those further into the upper watershed, that's something that they tend to be a pioneering species, and they also tend to migrate into rivers that have lakes, and we don't have a lake anymore, or you know, we don't have Mills or Aldwell anymore, but they're still coming and they're still spawning in the river. So there's a riverine population that's establishing itself, and I think that's something that we didn't really see coming, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would just add to that I don't think we really saw the bull trout migration coming along as quickly as it actually happened. I mean, I was hands-on part of the radio telemetry project during that time, starting in 2014, and it was just amazing. Those fish, how they just recolonized so quickly, and like Heidi mentioned, even before the top dam was out, they found a way to get through, and we were seeing them, you know, within a short period of time, all the way up near the headwaters. So that was really encouraging.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. What are bull trout eating pre and post dam removal?
Yeah, bull trout are piscivorous. They eat other fish. That's kind of their primary diet. They also eat eggs. Referring back to the bull trout or the radio telemetry project, one component of that project was to do a diet study. So we actually, the technical term is gastric lavage, but we forced vomiting and collected what was in their bellies just to observe what they were eating. We saw a whole variety of different prey in their stomachs. Some of the crazy oddball things were bees. We had a hornet's nest come out of the bull trout stomach. We had ducklings coming out of stomach. We had we had one bull trout that had a single steelhead smolt, which was probably about 10 or 12 inches in length. And that bull trout was just a little bit bigger. So it was pretty incredible, the size of prey that they're able to devour. And we've also seen a lot of, I'd say that the most common diet for bull trout is fry and par.
That's amazing. Thank you. Let's see here. Are the sockeye, how are the sockeye making their way into Lake Sutherland, or have you seen sockeye or coho in Lake Sutherland?
I don't think sockeye or coho have made it to Lake Sutherland. They've made it into Indian Creek at least. Those areas are not in the park, and we don't do a lot of monitoring there, but a good contact would be the the Lower Elwha Column tribe. They do a lot more surveys in that area.
Hey, I actually work for the Elwha tribe. Do you mind if I answer that question?
I know.
Cool. So the riverine sockeye are not reaching the lake, but they do have a lake population of kokanee. We're hoping that the sockeye reach the lake. What has reached the lake is coho, actually, and they are residualizing there.
Cool.
Thank you. Let's see. Is it still true that there is no evidence of a surviving population of Elwha origin sockeye? I've heard that all our current sockeye are strays from other watersheds.
I wouldn't say there's no evidence, but of the sockeye that we've been able to sample for genetics, they have been strays from other rivers. And we did have a riverine population of sockeye that spawned in the lower river prior to dam removal. So it's possible that there are still some remnants of that population in the Elwha, but we just haven't got our hands on any of those.
Thank you. We have time for probably one more. What factors do you think account for the presence of summer steelhead after dam removal when they were considered extirpated before?
So the Elwha has very high densities of Oncorhynchus micus. And it's possible that the steelhead form of that species has been sitting dormant for the last 100 years, and it was reawakened once the river was reconnected. I think that's part of it. Just, yeah, there's so many trout that it's just, the bank is already there.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple questions we didn't get to. Like I said, we will send those to Josh and Heidi and Dean and get those answered and share them through the NOLS social media platforms later this week or next week. Dean, do you have anything to wrap us up?
Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. It's great to be back with perspectives. Just a reminder, the next perspectives will be on February 8th, where we'll be hearing about some recent geologic studies that have been done by Aaron Donaghy and other students from Purdue University. And so please sign up for those and we hope to see you then. Thanks so much to Heidi and Josh for your time and for sharing your amazing work. And Heidi, I saw you swimming out of that eddy and I was impressed. So that was a pretty impressive feat right there. So if that's any indication of what you guys do on your jobs, you guys are amazing. So, and thanks for sharing that with all of us.
Well, thanks everyone for listening.
Okay. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for being here, and hopefully we'll see you next month. The recording of this will be made available on NOLS social media platforms by next week. Thank you.
Thank you.